May 2006. Life going on as usual, but I read a lot of good books. At least I thought they were good, most of them, if not all of them. I don't remember them all exactly, but let's dig in and see what I read in May of 2006. The first book was The Conqueror Worms by Brian Keene. This is the leisure version. Deadite Press put out the author's preferred edition, which is goes by his preferred title, Earthworm Gods. Brian Keene has a nice series on his YouTube channel. I think it's called Secret Histories, where he's going through all of his publications in order, and he's already talked about the Conqueror Worms / Earthworm Gods, but basically it starts raining and it doesn't stop, and that causes all sorts of problems, including carnivorous worms and other bizarre creatures and flooding. This is biblical types of flooding. This is possibly my favorite Brian Keene book. I usually say it is. I'd have to think really hard to decide if there was something I liked better than this. It's got killer worms in it, giant killer worms. Again, amongst other creatures and all sorts of other stuff going on. And it, some people complained. They said it was just two of his novellas slapped together. And Brian Keene, again, in his video, talks about the fact that that's not exactly what it is. He took two of his novellas and made them into one big story. There's sequels and short stories and stuff. So there's a whole world. And I'm sure it's going to pop up in the Labyrinth series. Maybe I shouldn't be. I don't know. I haven't started reading that yet. But there is a book in that series called Submerged. So chances are that might connect with this. Anyway, The Conqueror Worms by Brian Keene. The first book that I read in May of 2006. Now I have to flip my notebook over to the other page. And the second book I read in May of 2006 was Survivor by J.F. Gonzalez. This is another leisure book. Picked it up because it was a leisure book. And this is about a woman named Lisa who's planning on spending a nice romantic weekend with her husband. She's going to tell him that she's pregnant, but he ends up arrested. She ends up kidnapped by people making snuff films. So right off the bat, good stuff. Pretty wild, pretty extreme. I know a number of people who love extreme horror or splatterpunk. I'm not sure which category this falls into. Who said that they had to stop. They had to take breaks while reading this because of the extremity of it. I did not, because I know it's fiction. But it is pretty extreme. And there's one scene in particular. I believe it's in here. There is a sequel. Wrath James White and J.F. Gonzalez. There's a book. The two of them, Monsters. Is that the name of it? Anyway, there's a sequel to it. But I think the scene I'm thinking of is in this, not in the sequel. With an old lady and a young girl that I absolutely love. But wild Survivor, J.F. Gonzalez, a must-read for fans of splatterpunk or extreme horror. And plus, J.F. Gonzalez, always worth reading. After that, Six Bad Things by Charlie Houston. This is the follow-up to Caught Stealing. Our main character is Hank Thompson in Caught Stealing. It was not a comedy of errors, but he got caught up in something. Like, he wasn't the guy, but then he sort of becomes the guy because people think he's the guy. I'm trying not to spoil anything for that book, although slight spoilers. In Six Bad Things, our Hank Thompson is down in Mexico with a bunch of cash that doesn't really belong to him. Excuse me, but he's living life until a Russian tourist shows up and starts asking questions. And so Hank Thompson thinks he's in danger. His family back in the States might be in danger. So he has to try to get out of Mexico, get to his parents to make sure that they're safe. But there's just all sorts of people in the way. Not the greatest explanation, but it's a fantastic book. The second in the trilogy, the Hank Thompson trilogy. Caught Stealing was great. Six Bad Things is great. I really want to reread the entire trilogy. It's just that sort of that action-packed, everyman character caught up in circumstances beyond his control, and it's fantastic. After that, we have Silent Bob Speaks by Kevin Smith. This is nonfiction. It's the best of Kevin Smith's writings. Just essays about all sorts of stuff. Most, if not all, from Arena Magazine. I'm a Kevin Smith fan, and so I enjoyed this. If you like Kevin Smith, I think you would enjoy Silent Bob Speaks. After that, Fireworks by James A. Moore. This was from Leisure. Excuse me, a pretty thick book too, if I recall correctly. It takes place in Collier, Georgia, and it's 4th of July. Everybody's in town by the lake for 4th of July celebration, and a UFO crashes into the lake, immediately vaporizing all of the water, killing a bunch of people. But it's not about an alien invasion. Oh no, there is an invasion, but it's not the aliens. The government comes in. They quarantine the town. They want that UFO, and they'll do anything and get rid of anyone who gets in their way. So this is really characters, the townspeople, and what happens to them because this UFO has crashed into their town. And I thought this was really good. We're going to see much more of James A. Moore coming up, not in this video, but it's not too far off. I'm very excited. Little side note, I don't remember the publisher. Maybe for the next video, because that's when more James A. Moore is coming up. I'll have looked it up, but there's a publisher that is reprinting and maybe printing for the first time in some cases the entire Jonathan Crowley saga, with brand new Dan Brereton, that's how I say his name, covers and introductions and everything. And I have most of the books that they're reprinting, but I believe I'd really like to have those Dan Brereton covers and the introductions, these nice new paperback editions. And some of the ones I have already have Dan Brereton covers. So I'll give any that I buy that I already have, I'll give the other copies to my nephew. They've already printed Under the Overtree and then the Serenity Falls trilogy. So 4 out of, I think they're doing 10. So when I pick those up, I have all of those over there. I believe Under the Overtree is Leisure, and I think the Serenity Falls trilogy is Berkeley. I'm not 100% sure. I can't quite tell from here. But, yeah, those will end up with my nephew when I get those nice new editions. Jonathan Crowley, such a great character. That's neither here nor there as far as this list is concerned. Let's move on. The next book that I read, Star Wars Republic Commando 000 by Karen Travis. And this takes place during the Clone Wars. It is about a group of clones called Omega Squad, which is like an elite group with special skills. They're the Black Ops folks. And they are sent to Coruscant as the Clone Wars rage on. They're sent to Coruscant because there's a separatist group, I think it's separatists, who are working with somebody within the government to take everything down. And so the Republic Commandos, Omega Squad, have to go in and do what they can. It's very weird. This whole era of Star Wars is weird to me because we know that the Republic is going to become the Empire, but the Republic is generally the good guys. Not an era I'm completely familiar with, so I could be wrong about that. But not a fan of Karen Travis's writing. I do like the Omega Squad and Republic Commando stuff, but just I don't know, there's something about her writing that didn't work for me. But Star Wars Republic Commando 000, Karen Travis. After that, Without Mercy by Jack Higgins. This is a Sean Dillon book, part of the whole Sean Dillon series. And in the previous book, a couple of the people in Sean Dillon's group were grievously injured, and Hannah Bernstein is in the hospital because of those events, and an old enemy comes in and kills her. And so basically this is Sean Dillon and the rest of the group of people that we've come to know and love from this whole series out for revenge against the people that killed Hannah Bernstein. Huge fan of Jack Higgins, huge fan of the Sean Dillon character, and this is more of that exciting espionage action. Then we have The Truth with Jokes by Al Franken. Just before all the Al Franken controversy, a huge fan of his comedy, and the fact that he's, anti-right wing. And this is essentially just a bunch of essays about politics, but with jokes. Some of it's lighthearted. A lot of it, the whole thing's kind of lighthearted, but it's taking on some serious subjects. If you're a fan of Al Franken, I think you're going to enjoy this. If you are interested in political comedy, I think you would enjoy this. Unless you're like a serious right winger, then this would piss you off. But The Truth with Jokes by Al Franken. Then we have Star Trek New Frontier Missing in Action by Peter David, part of the New Frontier series. It was my favorite Star Trek series. And basically it's Mackenzie Calhoun is the captain of, let me make sure that I have the name correct. I didn't even write it down. Mackenzie Calhoun, captain of the USS Excalibur. For most of the series, they're supposed to be patrolling Thelonian space, I believe is what it's called. That's where most of their adventures have taken place. But Calhoun and the USS Excalibur have been thrown off into distant space, much like Voyager. And so they're in some sector of space, unknown sector of space. There are two alien races that are at war, and Mackenzie Calhoun basically is going to deal with either one or both, whatever it takes to get the Excalibur back to where it should be. Meanwhile, the Federation has declared Thelonian space off limits, and Commander Shelby or Captain Shelby, is she a captain at this point? Anyway, she and some of Mackenzie Calhoun's friends are going to ignore the Federation, go into Thelonian space, try to find the Excalibur. There's still conflict in Thelonian space. And some of their friends are in the middle of that. They're going to deal with that. I like Peter David's writing. I love the characters in this series. And Peter David can go from writing something absolutely hilarious to something absolutely heartbreaking. He can make that turn on a dime. If you're a fan of Star Trek at all and you haven't read and reading Star Trek, I know some people love to watch it and have never read a single thing, but if you're interested in reading any Star Trek stuff, I highly recommend the New Frontier series. And this is Star Trek New Frontier Missing in Action by Peter David. Next up, Deathbringer by Brian Smith, another leisure book. Now, this is the third Brian Smith book on the shelf, the third one over, but I believe it's his second novel. The reason it's third over is because House of Blood was first, and then there's a sequel, and so I put that sequel right next to House of Blood, even though technically chronologically from release date, that's not where it goes. But that's how I organize my stuff when I organize my stuff. That's all neither here nor there. This is basically Brian Smith's zombie novel, but there's a from the back it says in the middle of it all stands a dark, shadowy figure, a stranger in town with an unspeakable goal. If he is successful, death will rule Dandridge and the terror will continue to spread until all hope is lost. So that's the Deathbringer. So it's not just, oh, zombies have risen. Here's a zombie novel. There's someone / something in the middle of it all. As always, I'm a huge Brian Smith fan. And at some point, if I had all the time in the world, I would be rereading this older stuff. And I mentioned, I think in my review of Unseen 2, which just went up last Friday, I would like to go back and read some of his older stuff to see if it has the same feel as his newer stuff. Because his new stuff feels like he's just writing by the seat of his pants, just winging it. It's all wild and crazy and so fast paced. But anyway, that's all. Again, neither here nor there. A lot of tangents today. Deathbringer by Brian Smith. Let's see. Then we have Schlock Value, Hollywood at its Worst by Richard Roper. And this is a book of essays and lists and sort of random things all about Hollywood. There's an article about Richard Roper basically saying people need to stop their vanity projects, and calls out things like, what's his name? Kevin Costner and The Postman, or John Travolta in Battlefield Earth. There's lists of like movie budgets and salaries and basically all the money that went into these movies. This is a separate thing from the vanity projects. Another article or listicle about budgets and salaries and all that stuff. The money that's going into, where the money goes that goes into making a movie. There's a list or an article, whatever you want to call it. I can't remember if it's a list or an article about the age difference between Woody Allen and all of his leading ladies. So things like that. It's just a book filled with things like that. I like that kind of stuff. So it's Schlock Value, Hollywood at its Worst by Richard Roper. The penultimate book for May of 2006, The Ice Harvest by Scott Phillips. It was made into a movie with John Cusack and Billy Bob Thornton, a movie I have never seen. But I really enjoyed this book, although I did have the premise slightly wrong in my head. Just slightly wrong. But basically, did I write down? Yes, the character's name. Charlie. It's about Charlie Arglist, if that's how you say his name. And he's a mob lawyer who steals a shit ton of money, wants to get out of town. Wichita, Kansas, I believe. There's a snowstorm, and he has an appointment that he has to make before he can leave town. And so this is like just one day or night, day into night, whatever. I don't even know if it covers a full 24 hours. And he's basically going around town saying goodbye to the people he feels he needs to say goodbye to, taking care of last minute things, but trying to avoid the people he stole from and anybody else that might have it out for him during this snowstorm, and just trying to kill time until he can make this appointment and then get out of town. It's very noir. It's, unlikable characters or bad characters that are likable. I just loved it. I thought it was a fantastic book. And I don't know why I've never seen the movie. That's just how I am. I'm a weird person. But The Ice Harvest by Scott Phillips, if you like crime novels, if you like noir, especially modern day noir, although came out in 2000, I think, takes place in 1979, I believe. But I think a lot of people, when they talk about noir or hear noir, think older stuff. The postman always rings twice, or that kind of thing. So this is a more modern, definitely more modern written, even though it takes place in '79. But highly recommend The Ice Harvest by Scott Phillips. And the final book that I read in May of 2006 is Nightlife by Rob Thurman. This is the first book in a 10-book series, the Cal Leandros series. And this is urban fantasy. The world is filled with monsters and magical creatures, but excuse me, most people don't know that. It takes place in New York. Cal Leandros is half human, half monster. His father is something called an Auphe, Auphe. Not sure how you pronounce that, but he's called a Grendel. And Cal and his brother Nikos, or Nikos, have been on the run from their father, just trying to stay off his radar, out of his way. But his father's finally caught up with him because Cal is the key to releasing hell on Earth. So Cal has to try to stay alive, stop his father's dastardly plan, introduces us to the character, to the world, and the series becomes Cal dealing with his monstrous half while trying to defend people from these supernatural threats that are going to pop up. I don't know, because I don't look that far ahead, and I don't remember reading anything else in the series. When I was looking, I looked it up to remind myself what it was. One of the reviews said the closest thing they could, or the closest comparison they could make would be the Dresden Files for that urban fantasy feel. But if you like that kind of stuff, the Dresden Files, Nightlife by Simon R. Green, any of that stuff, you could give this a try. Nightlife by Rob Thurman. That is everything that I read in May of 2006. My question for this video: have you ever read something that was so either disturbing, mainly disturbing, but I'm going to throw in problematic, so disturbing or problematic that you had to stop reading it temporarily, not put it aside forever? Although I suppose we could throw that in there as well. Especially something if it was so disturbing that you couldn't even finish reading it. Problematic, it's easier to see not finishing it. When I was at Bowling Green, I took a sex education, sexual. It wasn't just called sex education; it was sexual something. I forget what it was. And one of the few textbooks I was reading while I was at school, but there were 2 chapters on sexual assault, essentially. And I found them so enraging that I could not read them. I would start reading it, and because it would have, this was a textbook, so it would have case studies or real life stories, and I would just start reading it and get so angry. And so I never read those 2. I read a few pages, tried, didn't finish those 2 chapters. Pretty sure that was in the sexual education class and not my abnormal behavior class. Yeah. But, yeah, I think it was in the sex ed class. Human sexuality, that's what the class was called. But yeah, that again, that was nonfiction. And it's just, I was so pissed off reading that I couldn't continue. But as far as, I've never read anything that was so extreme that I had to put it aside. The more extreme, the better. Not necessarily. All comes down to the writing, of course. But yeah, I like extreme stuff. And if it's, I'm more invested if it's that disturbing. I always talk about Edward Lee, and he has some of his books are incredibly disturbing, but some of them go so far into the extremity, term I apparently am going to use a lot today, goes so far that it becomes comedic. But that is absolutely not the case with something like Survivor, J.F. Gonzalez, or some of Edward Lee's other stuff, or even Wrath James White, another extreme author. I don't know. I don't recall ever finding any of his stuff tipping over into that. This is just ridiculous at this point kind of feeling. But as extreme as his stuff is, I've never put it down because I was bothered. So this is a case where I'm saying no, there's never been, with that exception of some nonfiction, never been anything that was either too extreme or too problematic. At least the problematic part, nothing off the top of my head. Typically, if I'm not finishing a book, and again, this is supposed to be about having to set it aside and coming back to it. Either I've set it. There's a few books I've set aside because I didn't get into them, and came back hoping maybe I was just in the wrong mood, and that's worked out on occasion. But yeah, typically if I'm setting aside a book, it's because I'm just not into the book. But what about you? That's the question. Let me know in the comments below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff. If you care to follow me on any other social media, I'll have links for my Instagram and Bluesky in the description below. That is all I have for you this week. So until next week, read more books.